Hey Cameron, the year is 1824 and you are William Hendricks, the third governor of the state of Indiana, and you've just approved the moving of the state capital from Corydon in the southern part of the state to its current location of Indianapolis. The move is controversial because the majority of the population at the time did reside in the southern part of the state, which is why the capital was there. But you had good reason for the move. Indianapolis is more centrally located in the state. Even though the population was largely in the south, it would be geographically right there in the center, and it had access to the White River, which would be used for trade and transportation, making it a seemingly perfect location despite being away from where the people were. The 130-mile move north took about a month because they had to chop through a bunch of trees and forests. Roads just weren't what they are now. After that month, they arrived here and they found a city that was pretty hot and humid, largely undeveloped, and thick with trees and forest. The city, nonetheless, checked the box of being centrally located, which was great. They began establishing the new city, building the new state house, and using the White River for trade. Not so fast. As somebody that lives here in Indiana, I've never once seen a trading ship on the White River, and that's because after they started to try to use it for trade, a bunch of ships started getting stuck, and they realized, too late, that the river's actually too shallow to use for trade. This made Indianapolis the largest U.S. city not located on a navigable waterway, which was a problem because boats were a pretty significant means of trade and travel. After the White River proved unsuccessful for trade, a project began for the Indiana Central Canal. This was a 296-mile canal project to connect the Wabash and Erie Canal to the Ohio River going through Indianapolis. Alas, we had a solution for the city. Construction began in 1836 on the canal that was going to be 6 feet deep and 60 feet wide. However, trouble always afoot, that cheeky bastard. After the Panic of 1837, Indiana was in financial trouble, and construction stopped on the canal after only 3 years of construction, leaving 8 miles completed of the 296 originally planned miles. All 8 miles of which were located right here in the capital city. Once again, leaving Indianapolis with the title that it still holds today of the largest U.S. city not on a navigable waterway. Wasn't without trying though, and at least we've put the canal to good use today. We've got the Central Canal towpath, which goes from Broad Ripple to about 30th Street, and the portion downtown has been turned into the Canal Walk, which is conveniently where I'm walking now and one of our family's favorite places to walk, connecting government buildings with White River State Park and a variety of green spaces. But what happened to the White River? Well, after finding out that they couldn't use it for trade, they just started dumping all of their waste into it. All of the waste that you can think of. Sewage, industrial waste. If it can go into the river it went. Then in the 1950s, the city built a network of waste/stormwater sewers, which is good, right? At least we weren't dumping sewage directly into the river anymore, right? Right? Bad news, not right. Because every time it would rain a lot, these sewers would back up and then would overflow into the river, filling it with that lovely pungent smell of rotting human excrement as the feces flowed freely. So with black scum on the surface and gas bubbles pushing their way through said scum to try to reach the daylight, the EPA stepped in 2006 and told the city, you gotta clean this up. That's after a couple hundred years of being one of the most polluted waterways in the country, which is impressive considering some of our country's waterways have actually caught fire. Shout out Ohio, or as I like to call it, Florida of the North. And ultimately, with the efforts to clean up the river, the water is now deemed safe enough to boat in, which is good, but not yet safe enough to swim in, which is bad, because E. coli. Improvement is very rarely instantaneous, and I hope that we continue to improve the quality of the water. And maybe we can be done with our waterway-related problems now, since we're a city that's famously landlocked and has no navigable waterway. And it gives me an idea for a new slogan for the city: Indianapolis, no ports required. E. coli, optional.